John Howard was Prime Minister of the country for, of course, a significant amount of time and is probably the best that we've had in a very long time. For many people, he was the best Prime Minister of his generation and was a great reformer. He, of course, is a man who is a conservative and has never hidden it, and he's a man who never holds back. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk to him, and we had a chance to do so a bit earlier today, where I wanted his political judgment about why no has now started to surge forward in the referendum debate.
Well, the main reason why a lot of people are going to vote no, and I'm not overconfident, I urge people who want the referendum defeated to keep arguing against it until the 14th of October. You can never take these things for granted. But I think the failure of the government to explain what is involved. We have no idea of precisely how this body is going to be elected, precisely how the separate electoral roll, because it will be a separate electoral roll, because fundamental to this proposition is we're going to have two classes of voters. We'll have all of us, including Indigenous Australians, and then we'll have a separate roll, presumably only of Indigenous Australians, to vote for this body. Now, we haven't been given that detail. We haven't been told precisely how many people are going to be elected. We haven't been told what their terms of engagement are once they're elected. We haven't been told precisely what procedures they will adopt, what powers they will have. We've been told, oh, if you vote for it, we'll tell you then. Well, that is nothing short of insulting to the Australian people. Peter Costello and I, when we launched the GST, we went to enormous trouble to detail what everybody would get or lose or how people would be affected. And we went to the 1998 election with a detailed plan, and I felt as though we were walking on eggshells through the whole of the campaign through fear we got a detail wrong. But the public was being asked to embrace the biggest change in decades in our tax system, and they were entitled to know what we were going to do. And the same applies. We're adding a new chapter to the Constitution. We're creating a new body, and it will be entrenched in the Constitution, and it will be there until the people vote to remove it. And that's not likely to happen, and they're entitled to know. And it's just verging on insulting and patronising to say, oh, we'll let you know later, don't worry. And when he was asked whether he'd read the full document about the statement from the heart, from Ulru's statement, Anthony Albanese said, oh, why would I do that? Well, heavens above, I've got news for you, Mr Albanese. The job of Prime Minister involves reading a lot of stuff. And it's always your job and your responsibility to read material relevant to a decision that you're taking. And I just ask people who might have made up their mind to vote no or are in doubt to bear in mind that they're being asked to vote for something that hasn't been explained. They're being asked to create a separate class of citizenship. We already had 11 Indigenous people in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And for all I know, the next election could produce more. It might produce less, I don't know. But you can't say that when 11 out of the House of Representatives of 150 and the Senate of, 70-odd, 76, that they're underrepresented. In fact, proportionately, the 11 represents a greater section of the population than those who identify as Indigenous is. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all in favour of it. But I want a nation where we're one people, one destiny, one set of laws, one set of responsibility, one set of rights and entitlements. I do not want an Australia which is divided according to race. And whenever you have a separate chamber, available only to people of a certain race and entitled to be selected only by people of a particular race, you are dividing our nation. And that is why a lot of Indigenous people, as well as other Australians, object to the voice.
Mr. Howard, I've thought long and hard about the way I was going to ask this question, so forgive me that inevitably, however I word it, it may be slightly awkward, but let's try. You've heard a lot of conversation about American politics and a lot of conversation about age in politics. Now, you're a bloke who, in my view, seems a lot sharper than the current President of the United States. What's your take on how old is too old to be in a position of leadership, and what's your view of what you can see before your own eyes of Joe Biden?
Well, it depends entirely on the individual. It depends. But there's no doubt that people are raising questions about the cognitive capacity of the current president. Now, I haven't seen him for probably 6-8 years. He's a thoroughly decent man. He's had a lot of personal tragedy in his life, but he's the President of the United States. He's the leader of the free world. And I have to say, with all candour, he doesn't seem to me to be up to it. But his possible alternative, Donald Trump, doesn't deserve to be president again because he lost the 2020 election. And to borrow a cricketing analogy, when you're out and your dismissal has been confirmed by the decision review system and the finger goes up for the last time, you've got to leave the field and take your bat with it and cop it. I didn't like losing to Kevin Rudd, and I'm sure Paul Keating didn't like losing to me. But we all had to accept it because you play the democratic game, you've got to live by its rules, benefit from its good decisions and put up with its bad decisions. Donald Trump wasn't willing to do that. So it's a pretty depressing choice, and I have to say that thank heavens we have a parliamentary system, because you wouldn't be in this situation that America's in if they had a parliamentary system.
Yeah, bloody oath. We get the chance to talk about it all, but, well, of course, all care, no consequences when it comes to what is happening in the United States, because we live here in Australia, but it doesn't mean we don't care and we don't take a great amount of detailed information from what is happening there.